Welcome everyone to the Portugal session. Number one, number two, whatever you want to call it. It's two sessions today from the Friends of Figma World Tour Conference. My name is Bruno. I am your host for the English language. I am a lead designer at the company called OutSystems, and I've been leading the Friends of Figma Portugal group since 2020. We were one of the first official Figma communities with the Friends of Figma label around the world, and we really love to organize this type of stuff. And it's super, I don't know how to put this, but like it's super fulfilling for me to actually see that we managed to do this for so long, that we know that we have helped inspire the team who created this thing, this amazing project called the World Tour, where all of these Friends of Figma groups are basically sharing some of the best content that we have from each chapter around the world. It's a 24-hour conference, so it's still going to go. We're basically a little bit over the halfway there, and there's still a lot more content to come. And it's a celebration of this community for sure. The richness and diversity, we already noticed on the chat that we basically have people from almost every continent, and I love that. I love that we have people from all over the place, but also we love to share local talent and local speakers, and Gonçalo is exactly that. And I hope you guys will enjoy the presentation. And without further ado, Gonçalo, the stage is yours. I'm not gonna jump into your content. I'm just gonna give you the clicker, and I think we should be good to go.
Yeah.
Oh, and one quick note before we keep going. I Patricia, we're the three of us are in Coimbra, Portugal, actually. The Q&A is open, so if you guys want to drop questions, please drop them in the Q&A. At the end of the session, we'll do a little Q&A moment, and one of you guys, Gonçalo, is gonna help me choose the question that he liked most from the Q&A, and that person is gonna receive a little voucher for the Figma store. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Gonçalo, the stage is yours. Take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much, Bruno. And hey, everyone. Nice to see so many people from so many countries. And I hope you're enjoying the session so far. It's actually an incredible event, like 24 hours. Live stream is just incredible. So also kudos to the Friends of Figma community to host the event and everyone that joins. So today I'm going to be talking about something that I truly care about, which is the gap between design and code. And specifically, I'm going to go over the current problems between design and code, and how we can solve them. But before we dive into the talk, I want to share a quick video. This is Tom Scott. You may know him from YouTube. He's a popular YouTuber. And this video is about a road in California called California Musical Road, which didn't exactly go to plan, but I'll let Tom explain.
If you drive down a certain stretch of highway in the California desert, you will hear music. It's supposed to sound a little bit like this. But instead, it sounds like this. That was the musical road of Lancaster, California, and as you may have heard, it's a little bit out of tune. If you
So I hope you could hear. It's definitely not a well-executed plan, but I'll go over why this happens, and I'll get a bit technical, but bear with me. So for a road to produce sound, the plan was to set grooves at a certain distance from each other. And to determine the distance between each groove, you need to consider two things: the speed of the car and the frequency of the note you want to produce. So as an example, let's consider the speed limit of 120 kph and an A4 note, which is 440 hertz. And if we make the calculations, it gives 0.08 meters, which is like 8 centimeters. So this should be the distance between each groove, right? But the thing here is that this can be interpreted in two ways. That grooves are 8 centimeters apart. So this is from the end of the first groove to the start of the next one. It's 8 centimeters. Or that there should be a groove every 8 centimeters, which is including the width of the groove itself. So this was the issue. Whoever did the calculations made the calculations based on how apart they are, so 8 centimeters, and the team that implemented it included the width of the groove itself. So because of this misinterpretation between two teams, this caused a small misalignment, and in this case, the road didn't really work at all. But why did I bring this example? Because I think we've all seen these versions of this on our work, on our teams. Maybe you write out a spec or a design is ended off and everyone thinks they're on the same page until the feature goes live, and then it's just off. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to be approaching it from two sides. First, collaboration, and how we can build a shared language between designers and engineers. And second, autonomy. How can we as designers build things ourselves and gain independence in our work? So before we look into how we can fix the gap, it's useful to understand about why it exists. The first thing is a bit historical, I think, because right from the start, design and engineering grew up on very different backgrounds. Design was born from print and working with static, fixed layouts where you arrange elements on a grid and you make sure everything is perfectly aligned and it works for this static page. But code, by contrast, comes from systems, and early developers were not really caring about placing things on screens. They were focused on managing state, memory, and working with processes. So meaning that code was never about layout. It was about behavior, how components behaved. And I think this is the first gap that still shapes the mental models that we see today. Designers are often aiming for static perfection, how the layout looks and feels in the ideal scenario. And engineers need to handle the dynamic reality that things are not perfect and system changes and reacts on inputs. And they are thinking about every scenario possible. So this would be the first gap, I think. And speaking of this different mindsets that designers and engineers have, it's important to talk about the happy path. So design always begins with the happy path, which is like the most elegant, aspirational version of the experience where everything goes right. You present the obvious flow, the one that makes the idea feel intuitive and clear. And it's compelling because it hides a lot of the complexity and it helps build confidence in the direction that you're moving in. But the reality is complex, and sometimes that happy path doesn't really materialize because we have multiple edge cases, and for every screen there are conditions, and for every action there are exceptions. So code always starts a bit from the opposite side. It starts by asking, what if? What if the user has no internet? What if the title's too long? What if the image doesn't load? Or what if the API call fails? These are just some examples. And I think this leads to gap number two, which is designers want to present solutions. They want to get approval. They want to move forward with their ideas. And the best way to do so is to present a clear and convincing path. And engineers, on contrast, they are trained to anticipate problems. They work more on the problem space, asking questions and getting to know the edge cases. And moving on, and this is kind of, I think, the last gap that among a lot of other ones, but this is something that happens daily in my work, which is the tension between consistency and creativity. And I think this is something very design versus engineering sometimes, because engineers typically thrive on components and predictability. So these are like reusable pieces of UI or logic that behave consistently across a product. And components are really good. They promote maintainability, they reduce bugs, and they speed up development. But on the other end, designers like components, but they like to break them sometimes and to bring up something new and to explore new patterns. And sometimes this means breaking out of the pre-existing component and introducing an exception or a one-off element that doesn't fit into the system. Sometimes this means introducing a new font or introducing a new color or just a different layout. So sometimes it feels like design and engineering are two disciplines working against each other. Developers are alerting the designers about the system, the components, and a new idea that breaks the existing component system. It's going to be difficult to implement. And these exceptions create technical debt and slow down the implementation. But designers want to innovate and bring new ideas and come up with new concepts. So it's this dialogue that sometimes causes a bit of friction. And I think that brings us to gap number 3, which is that designers explore what could be, like the world of possibilities, and engineers build what must be under the constraints of code and making sure the implementation actually works. So we've talked about the problems, and now let's talk about solutions, in specific through collaboration and between teams. And when talking about collaboration, I think it's inevitable to talk about the handoff. It's the moment when a designer reaches out to a developer and tells him it's his problem now. No, but seriously, I think the thing with handoffs is perhaps they shouldn't exist. In a way, the best handoff is no handoff. And what does this mean? That when teams are truly collaborating, there's a constant feedback loop between design and code. And this means that there's no point in time where you deliver something to the development team. There's frequent meetings, there's shared decisions that are made along the way, there's feedback loops, there's checkpoints. But this way of working has implications, as I just said. First of all, designers and engineers need to share mental models, and mental models are something above specs and requirements, because a lot of our work as designers sometimes is outlining the specs, the guidelines, and the requirements for the components, but it goes beyond that. It goes sharing the same principles of how to build an interface and how the UI works and how the UI reacts to states or reacts to data. So this is always a work in progress, but it goes beyond specs and requirements. And there needs to be tight feedback loops. So you can't just design on your own. And when that meeting comes where you have to hand off to the dev that's going to implement, it's going to be a mess, because to the dev, it's a surprise what you've just designed. And sometimes it's not feasible at all. So you as a designer need to continuously talk with developers, not only when the design is ready, but meanwhile the design is being produced. And lastly, regular syncs, which is a bit connected to the second point, but sometimes you just need to book 15 minutes to talk through a developer and ask him, is this feasible? Does this work? What are your constraints in code? And this can inform a lot your design and can shift you into a different direction while you're still working on the design. So I'll go now into actionable strategies to make it work. that in my experience I found helpful to improve my collaboration with developers. So the first one is naming conventions, and naming things is hard. So I think doing it together is better, and having a shared language between design and development, I think, is really the foundation of collaborating. So here I have an example of our typography tokens that we use at Sword, and specifically for, in this case, for the addings. But you can see that the sizes, the namings, the tokens, they exactly match between design and development. And what this means is that it's going to be much simpler for them to read through your design and apply the correct style. But of course, it goes beyond typography. It goes into components. Here, for example, we have a button with two common properties, which are size and variant, but they exactly match between design and development. There's no like guesswork. Is this a secondary, or is this an outline variant? Or is this a primary, or is this a solid button? I think you need to really clarify what the property name is. And sometimes this is boring. Naming is not the most fun thing in the world, but it really reduces the translation issues that sometimes happen. And it builds trust, because developers trust the design and trust that what they're going to implement is going to be correct. So the second thing that really helps, I think, is documentation. And as Word, we're very big on documentation, especially on the design side, and providing specs and guidelines for each component. And the thing here is that documentation is not just a point in time where you write the documentation. It's something that co-evolves between design and development. We are not the only ones writing here, and these specs are always changing, and with the regular things that I've mentioned earlier, they're evolved continuously. And we also have, for example, a notion table that goes through the components, the ones that are live, the ones that we just came up with, the ones that are new, and we have a design status, a dev status, and links for both Figma and Storybooks. So this helps give visibility for both teams on what is the progress, and for designers helps give visibility if the component is implemented already or it's still in the works. So this can be really helpful, I think. And third, walkthroughs. Sometimes documentation is not enough, and you need to jump into a meeting to explain how something works. Either it's Slack or Google Meet or a Loom that you can do yourself. And but the key thing here is that you show the behavior of the component and not just the visuals. And for that, walkthroughs can rely on different artifacts. They can rely on prototypes that you walk through with your team, having like the component states and then making a prototype out of that, so you can show them in a call. Or if the prototype will be very difficult to make, because sometimes you spend hours in Figma trying to prototype something, and sometimes it's just not worth it because the developer will have to do exactly the same thing. So sometimes you can just leave annotations. Here I have, this was an animation of the word, the condition. So back pain, then it was shoulder pain, then it was some other kind of conditions. And I just, instead of doing the animation and working it through, I just left a code reference and gave some key guidelines and specs on how it should work. And sometimes these are enough. It's more time efficient for you as a designer, and it's time efficient for the whole team and the things go forward faster. Here's another example. These were just some form states with some annotations, very fast to make, and I didn't this would be a simple prototype maybe, but it's just faster and sometimes easier for devs to see the static version with the annotations. And fourth, design QA, which at my company, it's a formal process in the product development. And we have a dedicated column in Jira that is called UX UI review. And when a dev pushes a feature to staging, the designer is included in the QA process, because we do have QA engineers that already spot the functional issues, but I think sometimes QA engineers need so much work on the functional side of things, and sometimes designers, as they were the ones that put the interface together, they are the best ones to actually review what was implemented. And we have a very simple definition of the different levels of the issues, which are critical, major, and minor issues. So critical directly affect the release, so the implementation can't go forward and must fix those. Major are just things that can go through but must be fixed post-release, and minor, just some considerations and nitpicks that are nice to have if there is time to implement, which is very simple and works for us. So this was about collaboration, but I think as designers, and with all the new tools we have and all the advancements in AI and all that, I think we have increasingly more capabilities of shipping things ourselves and implement things ourselves. So I think the first one is, yeah, you guessed it, Bruno, is the vibe coding. So there's multiple tools, and the key thing here with vibe coding, this is an interesting term as well, but the key is you won't be able to ship at least not now, to ship the perfect interface or the perfect landing page, or because right now these tools need a bit of hand-holding to get it right. But it's more about expressing intent. It's more about expressing your idea and have something tangible for example, your manager or your product owner to see and realize, okay, this has potential. Let's move forward to an higher fidelity design. And this is something that as I had earlier, that animation, I didn't want to do it in Figma, so I just went into Lovable and I prototyped it. It's just 2 or 3 prompts, and it's already realized what I was trying to do. And myself, I've identified some problems right away, because as you can see, if you have a center title, the relieve word will need to shift to the left and to the right, which is something I didn't think about. So yeah, it helps you express intent, but it also helps you identify the gaps that you didn't realize in a static design. So these tools are really great to use as designers. The second, I think we spend a lot of time in Figma, and Figma is a vector editing tool. It's been shipping things to that make it more aligned to the web with Figma sites, but it's still worth it to explore other solutions like Framer and Webflow. I think they give you a different mental model of how the web works, because they're tightly related to the web, because their runtime is the web. And I think it helps to express your ideas into a medium that speaks the web language. And so this is actually a component that I've worked on in the past in Framer, and I think that's a good thing in these tools as well. They allow you to dive into code, and maybe if you're curious about starting to learn how to make a component with code, then these tools give you a great playground to test that. moving on, I think one of the things that helped me the most when I was speaking about the design QA is to be comfortable with dev tools. And because you start knowing how to inspect a button, for example, or check paddings or simulate breakpoints, and that gives you precision when you're flagging issues. So instead of saying this looks off, you say this is off by 8 pixels because you see in the dev tools that they're using a different token. So you essentially become a much better QA partner. And lastly, and this is something that I suffer constantly because I love animations and I love having those micro interactions. And this is an example of a tool, of a code tool that is used for animations. Because the thing with Figma is that it has some animation principles, like Smart Animate. It lets you define the durations, the curves, and it lets you add delays. But engineers sometimes have a hard time decoding that to a real animation in code. And I think learning yourself how to code these animations, which are pretty similar. The language is the same. You already know the language, the delays, the easing curves, the durations. You just need to express it in a different medium, which is code. And as a designer, when I started having control over the little pixels and the little duration changes that I wanted to make, but I didn't want to bore the engineer with that, it gave me a lot of freedom and gave me a lot of power in controlling exactly the output I wanted. So key takeaways. If you don't remember anything from this session, I think you should remember 3 things, which are that design and code evolve together, and that they shouldn't be different disciplines, or shouldn't have there should be a point in time where you say that design becomes code. I think things grow in both directions, because designers bring ideas early, then engineers shape them, and both sides are in constant conversation. And it isn't so much about finishing a design before engineering starts. It's about building together, continuously iterating through regular things, through feedback loops, and shaping the final experience as a team. Because Figma files don't capture the edge cases, they don't capture the interactions, sometimes they don't capture the logic. But when you evolve that together, between design and engineering, you catch those things earlier, and then it materializes into a better interface that feels more intentional, it feels more polished. The second is that design and code should speak the same language, because I think this is one of the biggest sources of misalignment. And as I've said, it sounds boring, but sometimes a button is called primary large and the component is called solid large or solid medium, and it creates uncertainty. It slows down because you need to talk with the developer. No, it's not that button, it's the other one. And I think teams that speak the same language and that are aligned with the same design tokens, the same component names, they are really fast because they don't need to worry about low-level decisions, and they don't have to translate the design. The engineers just see the design and already know what to implement. And lastly, embracing the blur between design and code, because the best designers I know, they don't just design. They know how to prototype, they know how to go into dev tools, they know how to play with code. They might not ship production code, but they know how to make a simple component or a simple layout using code. And the same goes for engineering, because the best engineers I know are just not, they care about the layout, they care about typography, they care about animation, and they're not just code monkeys. They actually, they shape the experience. And if you embrace this blur, both as a designer, if you're engineering, if you're a product person, if everyone in your team embraces this blur, and the more fluency you build, and the less you depend on handoffs, for example, I think the more you're able to bridge the gap between design and code. So thank you. Open to questions now.
Thank you very much, Gonçalo, for this, and thanks for everyone who already started dropping questions. I would invite everyone to just go to the Q&A and put a little like on their favorite question so we can actually see what everyone really wants to hear more about. There's already a few questions there, so that will help us understand what are the most voted questions. Okay. Let's start already with the one that's already on top, which I think it's a good one, which would, for you, Gonçalo, what's your favorite tool that really helped your team specifically, bridge the gap between design and code?
Okay, the favorite tool. Well, within my team, I think there are several tools. I think it helps to have Figma and Storybook very aligned, and so Storybook is a good tool to, and I think it's a must-have tool. Either it's Storybook or some other documentation, but that it's actually in code, so you know that the component is well built and is sure to be correct in the implementation. And as a designer, I really like the AI tools that have been coming out. I've honestly used probably all of them, V0, Lovable, that I use the most, I think. But now and today I actually had a meeting with a designer from my team that had used Figma Make, and the good thing with Figma Make is it can go directly into your design system, and so it ships things already with your typography, with your color, because with other tools you need to send a screenshot that just doesn't capture the whole system. So yeah, I think those are the tools that I like the most.
Cool. Okay. Second question here with most votes. It's actually starts with a story from Axel. So he says that we have a solid design system, but developers still struggle to implement our designs, mainly because we don't have paid seats in dev mode and can access everything we assume they do. What's your advice for making their lives easier without needing to have a paid seat in dev mode? Annotations are the obvious, but how could we take it a step further?
Yeah, I think, annotations are the obvious, and then we made a specific annotation component that kind of tries to replace it, because that's the biggest pain point I felt. Beyond that, I think just having, as I mentioned, good documentation, and that you have a clear source for engineers to understand the specs and how the component behaves on different breakpoints, on different layouts. I think documentation is really important, and I think sometimes if you're struggling to get engineers to implement exactly what you've designed, I think it might not be a problem of having dev tools, but it might be dev tools, not dev tools, dev mode in Figma, but it might be a problem of not communicating early enough, because sometimes it's not worth it to spend 1 hour writing documentation. Sometimes you can just talk with the engineer, and on both sides, you designer talk with the engineer comes to you, and building that culture that someone can just jump into a Slack huddle and talk together to fix things. And if you have a lot of these moments over time, you'll see that the final product is much more aligned with what you've designed.
Cool. Question from Samir. While vibe coding has started showing its relevance, what is the risk of roles of designer and developers getting merged?
I think it depends on the context. I think it's great that you can use an AI tool to think about something, have the idea, then design it, then implement it. And I think that is a good risk to have, that you can just be a designer and the developer. And I think that works on like startups and on agencies. And it's actually a good thing because there's a lot less people. You need to wear a lot more hats, and that's a good thing. But for bigger companies, I think it's still good to have the separation between design and development teams, because honestly, there's a lot to think about at scale. And even if you use AI tools, the AI tool, at least not now, this is evolving very quickly, but they don't capture the full context of your company or of your product that you're building, of the website that you're building. So it still helps to have designers thinking about the concept, thinking about the idea, and developers worrying about the implications, the constraints, and all the code functional things.
Okay, cool. And as an extension to that, Dorota asked, where do you think the biggest risks or challenges lie in maintaining clear ownership and accountability for product decisions? I think you already talked a little bit about that in different levels. Like you talk about the startup being some places where maybe, or agencies where maybe design developers being more accountable is important, but I don't know if I have any other specific feedback on this.
Yeah, I think you can take a lot more ownership, and you should, in startups and agencies. But even at scale, you should take ownership of what you're doing, and actually take ownership not only for what you've designed, but for what is implemented. Because ultimately, if something is live, but it doesn't match what you, designer, did, it's also your fault. It's not the developer fault. So, of course, a lot more ownership in actually what you're doing at an agency or in a startup, because you go the whole way. But even at scale, you need to take ownership of the full product development process.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few other questions here with more votes, but I think I'm going to leave at least one of them for later, because there's two questions here that I think kind of add on to each other. So we have Nicole asking, do you think that vibe coding, AI interpreting design vibes into working code, will actually replace traditional coding or just speed it up? That's question number one. And then the second one, which is also on that line, but well, actually, no, it's more on the line of the previous question. So maybe I'm going to leave it for later. It has to do with like, how much should we learn about code? But I'm going to leave you with that one. Like, do you think that this will actually replace traditional coding or just speed it up?
Speed it up, because, and I've seen a tweet the other day, which I really resonated with me, which is like, these tools, I think they are like a multiplier. So if you're already a good developer, so you're a 10x developer, if you get one of these tools, they are a multiplier to what you already are. So you become an 100x developer. But if you don't understand the foundations of code, if you don't understand even the basic HTML, CSS, but also, like, for example, a framework like React, then if you can't really talk with an AI tool to implement what you want, and then you can't even review the code because you don't understand it. So it's a multiplier. I don't think it will replace traditional coding, if you're speaking that traditional coding is just not vibe coding.
Okay. And then Aaron, which was the other question, which I was kind of messing up a little bit, is asking, is saying, Aaron, I'm honestly tempted to take courses for front-end development to understand the dev team struggles and empathize with them by adjusting my designs. Do you think this could be a big help in bridging the gap between designers and developers? And should I, as a designer, also learn full-stack development? Some job descriptions for UX UI designer would require knowledge on HTML, CSS. I'm not sure as to why they would require that if they are looking for a designer.
Yeah, I think it's always helpful, and you see a lot of those questions on social media if designers should code, and I think my opinion is that is always good. And taking a course is a good way to do it. I don't know if taking a full stack course is entirely necessary. If you're just working as a designer, you probably will not have a lot of times that you concerned about the data. You're not concerned about the front end, what it's going to be. But I think it's definitely helpful. And I think if you're working together with an engineering team, then it's a huge plus to you to learn at least the front end coding part. And this means like basic HTML, CSS, that's good. Then if you can move into a framework like React, it's the most popular one, that's even better. And then, as I mentioned, for example, animations, it's also something that it's very useful to know in code. But as everything, I think you can't just be a designer, or a developer can just be a developer. If you grow beyond your domain, it will bring you so many advantages, both at startups and agencies, both at established companies.
Okay. We're starting to get a bunch of questions that I don't know if we're going to have time for all of them. So I'm just going to go try and finish up the most voted ones. We have one question that is about tooling and one question that is about common mistakes. The one about common mistakes is, what are some common mistakes designers make when creating or using components in Figma?
I didn't catch it. Can you repeat?
What are some common mistakes designers make when creating or using components in Figma?
Common mistakes.
If you don't have an answer, it's not a problem. We can also just talk about the other one, which is a little bit more direct, but I'm going through the most voted ones first.
I'll just mention that I think sometimes, and I've seen this with junior designers, is like creating a lot of Boolean properties and a lot of true falses for everything, because that's not how it works on code. Most of the time, you have a property that has a lot of variance, and if you're just doing show height on everything, it's going to become very complex, and you left impossible states in the component.
Yeah, makes sense. And then there's a very specific technical question. Do you guys use log sheets or change logs in the Figma files to document changes / updates made after dev mode is ready? After dev mode ready is shared, is that useful?
We don't use change logs, at least not in a formal way. You can always see the version history, and sometimes I do it, which is like create you can give a name or a little checkpoint to one of the version histories, and I think it's really helpful to create that checkpoint when the handoff is made, and that's something that I would recommend doing.
Cool. And one last question, and I'm sorry for the other guys, but we really need to manage a little bit this. Well, we can try. Let's see. We have at least 2 questions here. I think we can do both. Between all these shared mental models, type loops, and regular syncs, which one have you struggled with the most, and how did you learn to improve it?
I think, well, shared mental models is something a bit abstract, but sometimes it's hard to make a developer think like a designer, and for you as a designer to think like a developer. And I think that's, for me, that's the one that I have the most work in progress, because I always forget one of the states that I should care about, and one of the implications that I didn't predict. So I think that's one of the most difficult ones. And also just regular things, sometimes I'm not very comfortable with I'm just starting out a concept, so I don't think it's useful to include a developer. So you have to force yourself to, okay, no, let's nag the developer and actually have his opinion on this. And I think those are 2 difficult ones.
Cool. I'm just answering a question about the recording, and I just need to double check here. There's two other questions here. One of them is duplicated. I don't know if it's a bug. I'm just gonna try and dismiss one. But the first one is, how do I find a UX UI job that doesn't want me to also develop and deploy stuff?
There are a lot of UX UI, I think, that don't force you to code.
I think if I can add something on that, I think that like it's not that there's a lot of roles like that will not make you code. What's might happen is that from now on, more will expect you to build things. They don't expect you to code. They expect you to learn tools that will do code for you. So it's very much like how Samir said, where we should focus on the user and not the full stack coding. These tools are basically that. They are tools that will make your code for you. You just need to really understand how to manipulate those tools to generate the experiences that you want. And I think Gonçalo also showed a little bit how he did his own like that.
Exactly. It's using natural language. You don't need to code, but you need to curate the outputs that it puts out.
Curators is a term that we're going to see more and more in a lot of things because of the pace that technology is going. A lot of jobs are kind of being shifted into curation rather than craft. Okay, we have enough time. We still have the 10 minutes, so I think we can still do it in the last 5 minutes. So not sure if you still have time. Very general question, but how do you handle documentation and delivery for complex projects when the time frames is really tight? Question coming from someone leading an identity redefinition project for a company, but having a very tight time frame for the website release and using Zeppelin as a delivery tool. Very specific.
Yeah, it's always hard to do documentation when you have a tight deadline. I think you need to rely a lot more on annotations and being specific to the design you've just developed, you've just designed, and being specific on the nuances there, and not try to do a whole documentation in or Zeppelin or any other tool. You need to focus on what you've designed and spec it and guidelines and add guidelines, great guidelines to that specific piece of work. Then after the deadline, if you have time, then formalize that into a document. But sometimes you just need to ship and it's difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. I have conversations with other speakers on other sessions, that also the stuff that we do at OutSystems in my case. Everything from building flows where the actual flow on the document in Figma is clear enough for a developer to go step by step and things like that. Even that is documentation without being documentation. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do that it's part of your job as a designer that probably will make it easy enough for you to not have to do a lot of documentation that it's harder to do. Okay. And that means that we went through all of the questions. I don't know if there was anyone specifically that already comes to mind as like the one that you really liked, Gonçalo. You can take a second and check the ones that are on the Q&A there while I do the last notes, but we'll make sure that we get back to this and give the gift card to the person that is supposed to get it. Okay. Just so that we're doing our best to keep going, FYF World Tour is not stopping. We still have another session right after this from the Friends of Figma Rio de Janeiro. So we're going from Portugal to Brazil, where Antonio Braz from Zynga will be talking about designing for play, what games taught me about being a better designer. Aside that, another thing that we really would love is if you guys could just give us a little bit of feedback. It's really fast. We have a form. It should take about 1 minute, and it should help us make a second edition of the World Tour happen with even better structure and better ways of work. And because nothing great is made alone, which is a sentence very used at Figma that I love, we really just want to give a shout out again to all the groups that are organizing today with us. This conference is a victory. A lot of organization from the core team, and we really love that the World Tour came to be. And on a side note, if you guys like like the experience of the World Tour and are enjoying today's sessions and everything, and if you're looking for another Friends of Figma conference, here in Portugal, we actually have the original Friends of Figma conference called Layers. And because we didn't want to steal the highlight and steal the shining from World Tour, we didn't launch as much information until today. We just opened registrations and waitlist for our event in October. So if you guys go to the Friends of Figma portal from Friends of Figma Portugal, you can now register for the online sessions or join the waitlist for the in-person sessions in Porto. All the information will be shared soon. Now, before we leave, Gonçalo, have you got any favorite?
Yeah, I think I have one. I think it's from Dororatai about ownership, because I think that's something that's not talked enough sometimes. And yeah, I liked answering that. So
Okay, Dorora. So congratulations. I don't know if you're still here. I hope you are. I'm going to try and tag you, see if you're still here. There you go. Do send us a message on LinkedIn or on our Instagram. Any one of those, it's easy enough. And we'll send you the codes for your gift card. And that's it. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you very much, Gonçalo, for all the amazing takes. And just go ahead and enjoy the rest of the World Tour and let us know if we can do anything else for you. Okay. See you guys.
see you.